Today I'm going to show you how to take an old mason jar like this and turn it into an epoxy coated work of art like you see here.
This is what you'll need: your epoxy resin, paint, any glitter you're going to use, some cups and sticks. I'm using spray paint for my base coat, a torch to pop any bubbles, isopropyl alcohol for cleaning, cling wrap for protection, gloves for added protection, some painter's tape, a respirator, your cup turner, and of course, our jar. This first step isn't necessarily required, but I like to use the cling wrap to wrap the base of my cup turner, the little arm that it comes with, to try to keep the spray paint off of it. Next, we're going to use our painter's tape to tape off the top rim of our mason jar. My vision being what it is, I have to get what I call face deep in everything I do, so I'll do my best to give you good camera angles throughout. On this mason jar specifically, there's a little lip underneath where the threads are. That's the line in which I'm taping to. We're using about half the thickness of the tape, so once we get a good solid line all the way around it, I just kind of go around and fold the extra lip inside. Now that we have the rim of the glass all taped up, we can go ahead and place it on the arm that came with our spinner. We're going to take the foam end and kind of compress it and gently push it inside of our cup. We don't want to mess up the tape. We also want to make sure it's got a nice firm grip on it, nice and level, so it doesn't fall off of that arm while it's spinning. Now that we have it on the arm, this will be the last time we want to touch it with our hands without gloves. The next step here is to take isopropyl alcohol and wipe it down. We want to remove all the oils and dirts that we left on there from getting it ready. And with it now free of grease and fingerprints, we can move on to spray paint. Now you want to make sure you do this in either a very well ventilated room like I have here, or if you can, preferably do it outside. But even if you're in a nice ventilated room, it's always a good idea to use a respirator. Now, using the stick from my cup turner as a handle, I'll slowly spin the cup as I do basically pumps of the spray paint. You don't want to do too much in one spot or kind of hold it down. You'll end up with puddles or pooling. You want to have a nice, crisp, flat surface when you're done. Once you're satisfied with your first coat, we're going to want to let it dry for about an hour and come back and check on it. You want to look for any really light spots, especially something like this that's got contours to it, to make sure you're giving a nice even coat. But once you're satisfied, let's get dressed up and ready for our second coat. You're going to want to do the exact same thing you did the first time, just make sure you get a nice even coat around the whole thing. And if I didn't mention it before, make sure you shake your spray paint very well before you start using it. You guys want to see the most fun way there is to take off a glove? Nice.
Now that our base coat is done, and you can test that by taking your finger and just, I recommend touching the bottom of your cup. If you feel any kind of tackiness or stickiness to it, give it another hour. If you see any kind of fingerprints or anything in there, give it a little more time, let it harden up to where it doesn't have any real stickiness to it at all. But now we're ready to move on to epoxy.
I like to use a couple of sheets of printer paper to catch any of the epoxy drips or any of the paint drips. The first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and take that cling wrap off of the arm. It will get bunched up inside of your cup turner. Once that's removed, we're going to go ahead and place the cup back onto the foam by compressing it and firmly placing it inside as level as possible. Use the arm to place it inside of its slot nice and firmly. Don't use your cup to press on it too much. You will end up sticking the stick through the foam. Once that's all done, it's time to put your respirator on and get ready for epoxy. For this step, you're going to need your A and B parts epoxy, your paint and any glitter you're going to use. I like to use a scale because, again, my vision being what it is, I like to weigh out my epoxy. We're going to grab our cups and sticks, and let's get started. The plan here is to take these three colors, blue, red, and white. We're going to mix the blue and the red to get a purple, the red and the white to try and get a pink. Using my scale set to grams, for the base coat, I like to use 20 total grams. So that's 10 grams of part A and 10 grams of part B. For the extra colors that I'm going to be making, I'm doing 10 total grams of those, so 5 grams of part A and 5 grams of part B. If you can still see and read, typically the instructions are a 1-to-1 ratio and they give you little cups that have milliliters that you can use to measure that out instead. Just make sure you follow the instructions for whatever epoxy resin you purchase. I'll make sure to add links to everything I used down in the description. What I'm doing here is mixing the parts A and B without stirring them. I'm sprinkling in a little bit of glitter straight into that mixture and then setting them aside, getting ready to add our colors to it. I found that you get a much better consistency at the end if you wait to mix everything at the end. Our next step here is to go ahead and add our colors. We're going to go ahead and stir everything up, and I'm going to explain the process of adding the epoxy to the jar. You'll end up probably going through 3 gloves to do this process. The first is to use your hand to slowly pour the epoxy onto it as it spins, while using your forefinger to kind of gently smooth and caress the epoxy across the entirety of the jar. The goal here is to have as even of a smooth coat as possible, including the base. If you end up with any dry spots, the paint we're about to put on top won't swirl and it won't turn out right. The next step I'm doing here is using a small blowtorch to heat and pop any of the bubbles that are on the surface. Epoxy, once it gets poured, can have these bubbles form inside of it, and if they stay there and set, it'll ruin the surface of it. So you want to gently and evenly cover the surface, checking for bubbles, and make sure you get them all popped. Don't leave it on there for too long or you can overheat the epoxy and cause it to drip. The next step here is to go ahead and add our paints. I'm adding the blue and red to try to make a purple. I'm next going to add the white and red to try and make a pink. Be careful not to overstir and create any bubbles in your epoxy color mix. The process of adding it is very simple. You're just going to use your popsicle stick to kind of scoop a little bit, and I'm just basically dripping it over the top almost like you're doing a caramel drizzle. My process is usually to go with the darker colors first and then add the lighter colors on top of it. Now, looking at it right now, don't be worried. It looks terrible, but watch as the process happens. Just after 5 minutes of letting it swirl, you can already see how the paints are starting to work together. After 4 hours, let's see how it turned out. You can see how the paints swirled together so much more than you would expect from just drizzling it on top of it.
It's been 24 hours, and look at our result. And now we can go ahead and take it off of our stand and get this tape off of here. A couple things to note on our jar here. After going over it, you can feel it's got this nice glossy surface to it. But right here, I'll get a close-up of that, a bit of the glitter is now sticking through that epoxy from where I pre-mixed the glitter in with it. That's okay. You got 2 options to fix it. You can either get some high grit sandpaper, something like 220, 360, and give it kind of a light sand all the way around it. I'd recommend kind of giving the whole surface a light sand if you're gonna do that so it stays even, but that'll knock that down. Now, if you have a bunch of them sticking out all over here, it's a lot easier to just put it back in your spinner and put another light layer of epoxy, just clear coat over the whole thing, give it another 24 hours, and you'll be all done. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave any comments, like, subscribe. I've got plenty more to come. I'll see you guys in the next one.